This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just going for a walk in the park now after work. I've decided to ignore the very convincing voice in my head that prefers that I do bad things like sit on my hole and eat fried chicken. You know that voice in your head that's like the most convincing salesman in the world but offers no data or has no critical debate skills? It's like I live half my life. If anyone says a fact or anyone gives a point of view, I'm that guy. It's very much, what's your sources, bro? Where'd you get that information from? But when it comes to that voice in my head that gets me to do the most easiest of decisions, he doesn't need any references. So yeah, I'm going to do about 3 or 4 laps of the park. And let's see how much of those this voice message or voicemail or whatever the fuck it is lasts for. So I saw Twilight of the Warrior Walled In last night. Movie that I mentioned to you that you were very much aware of as well. I've been watching a few Chinese movies lately, and not that they are identified because they're Chinese in terms of genre or anything like that, but I had watched Shadow the week before and The Assassin. Both of these movies are recommended as a kind of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon affair. That's why I wanted to check them out, but both of them very devoid of the type of action that I wanted. So I knew for a fact that this was more of a Hong Kong martial arts type of movie. So on a Sunday night, I thought I couldn't go wrong and it would hit the spot, as they say, which it certainly did. I actually read that it's a nomination for Best International Film for the Oscars for Hong Kong. So they're putting it forward, which is pretty cool because I wouldn't describe it as a typical Oscar movie, but from time to time we do get these international movies that are nominated that are not very Oscar-like. So hopefully this will do well, because it's a movie that I enjoyed a lot. It's not a heavy movie, it's a very easy movie to watch actually, and it will definitely hit that fix in our sweet spot of that kind of easy to watch, get whisked away with a very easy to digest type of affair. And this movie, it struck me quite a lot actually. I don't know how much you remember about it or how it was presented to you when we were saying that we should watch this movie. It's set in Hong Kong in the 1980s. It's got that great aesthetic nailed down of those Chow Yun-fat films from the 80s. That escapes my name now. There's 3 of them. I actually did a podcast on it with my friend. He'll kill me. The name escapes me. But it's almost like an aesthetic that you'd be very familiar with if you're fans of Hong Kong cinema. And it's got that CGI and that set design. Very reminiscent of the show Warrior. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a pretty decent show. I think it's inspired by the writings of Bruce Lee. And It has that kind of half comic book feel, half anime feel to it. Well, this is quite a hybrid, actually. This is almost a mix between, and maybe I don't want to give you so much of a comparison, but this is almost like a Miyazaki martial arts movie, but at the same time, that's probably totally misleading. But in the opening scenes, we're introduced to this character played by Raymond Lamb, who is our main guy, the dude with the kicks, so I like to say. He's a refugee that arrives in Hong Kong, and I think his main ambition is to get an ID in order to either get out of the country or get out of his situation and maybe go to the rest of China. I don't know, it's never explained, but he's got a goal to get out of this place and get his ID and make some money in the process. And he gets tricked by one of the triad bosses early on, and he has this great chase sequence where he gets on a boss, and it's very good fight sequence. Reminds me a little bit of Police Story, actually. Very good little runaway chase scene and fight sequence, and he ends up in the Walled City, which apparently is this real city, or a real part of Hong Kong around the time where basically anyone's welcome, whether you're an illegal immigrant or someone that's a bit dodgy. All sorts of people live there. And he arrives in this place with a bag of drugs that he stole from the triads, and he meets this guy Cyclone, who they have an initial fight, and then he takes him under his wing. But one thing that really struck me about this movie early on is the affection that's had and the almost magical world building that's had for the community of this development, or whatever you would call it. It's almost like a big block of flats, or maybe it's a bit like what we saw in Dread, where there's a tower block, but at the same time there's so much industry, so much shops, so much culture and community built around it. This is that, but there's a low-key affection without ever paving away at the cracks of this is also a really dodgy place with prostitutes and bad people. So I really like that. I was watching it with my partner, and she actually said, I don't know why, but this is reminding me of the Bat House in Spirited Away. And there is something to that, where it's almost like the character played by Raymond Lamb has been transported to this mystical place that shouldn't quite exist, and there's a legend around it, and there's an aura around it, and I just really like that. And it's just something that's presented as a backdrop without ever expanded in a lower sense in terms of the plot, although there is a backstory that forms part of the plot of the territory of this location and what happened previously that were presented with very early on in the movie. But I'm just talking about an aesthetic point of view. There's lots of different things to observe, like sweet making, people going across their shops, and all these various foods being made and prepped, fish balls and whatnot. So I really like that, and it kind of takes you a bit off guard. And Raymond Lamb, I don't know much about him. I did Wikipedia him, but I don't really remember much, unfortunately. There's probably a lot more experts than me. I mean, there's no probably about it. I'm probably someone who just watched their first movie from Hong Kong today. I'm probably slightly ahead of them, but he as a main martial arts lead is really cool because he looks a bit like a beaten dog. He's a bit scrawny, and not in that wiry sense that he can do stuff, but do stuff in a martial arts sense, I mean. But he's very much someone that you aesthetically wouldn't think would be the lead in a martial arts movie, but he's really good, and that type of beaten down dog quality, as I said, really adds to it as well. But the main thing I think about this movie is it's just so much fun. And it's a fun that I think, this probably isn't a word, but it's been cynicalized by people who grew up after these movies, where it became a bit ironic. You know, these kind of action movies of the 90s, these dumb Arnie movies and these type of things that people grew up on, or maybe didn't grow up on. Now that's a bit of a joke. But there's an affection and a type of G.I. Joe sandbox feel to those movies in people like my heart. I don't know about you, but I know you like those movies. But there's something about them that you got them at the right time, and they just have this type of sandbox G.I. Joe, playing with your toys, anything's possible innocence to them. Even though people who rightly laugh at them under certain circumstances are almost right to do so, because it is also ridiculous. These movies like Predator and these macho movies and these very over the top action movies and these ridiculous kung fu movies. But I think what happened after that was movies like some Marvel movies or modern action movies, in my opinion, they came along and then they obviously were, and this is just my feelings, they obviously were inspired by these movies. They obviously had an affection for these movies. But then it kind of became, yeah, but we're also not treating these movies seriously. We know they're a joke, right? So when we're going to be riffing on these movies, we're going to be thinking, oh yeah, we know it, but we know this is a joke. Oh, but we know this is ridiculous. Ah, yeah, we know this is, actually, this is a joke, and look how stupid we're being right now, while playing homage to it at the same time. The feeling I get from this movie is they didn't have that, oh, wouldn't it be cool? Oh, wouldn't, yeah, I know what we're doing. I know what we're doing. It's more, wouldn't it be cool if we just did these things? Because it's the same type of innocent of possibilities of a child in a fucking playground, just coming up with these things that no one's there to critically tell them this is dumb. You're just thinking that would be cool. And that's the overall feeling I got from this movie, and the overall pleasure I've got from this movie. When we get this scene early on between Raymond Lam and the main character called Cyclone, I can't remember the actor's name, he is presented to us as a barber, and Raymond Lam, or Ray Lam, takes him as a hostage. And then we don't know that, no, this guy knows kung fu. So what Cyclone does is flips him over, does a maneuver that involves, I can't remember exactly what it is, a somersault or some kind of cool thing. While he's doing that, he manages to still catch the cigarette in his mouth before it lands, because he's that fucking cool. And it's not done in that kind of, as I said, this is ridiculous. It's not. It's more all done in the spirit of, this is cool. That's pretty cool. Don't question it, but it's cool. And that is the overall stimulus I got from this movie repeatedly. there's another scene later on where we get the backstory between the bosses and Jimmy Chow, I think it is, and Cyclone, and we get into this backstory and a bit of the lore that's a bit ridiculous, a bit Star Warsy, but I was there, hook, line and sinker for it. And we get this great fight in the dark where we get these sparks between the daggers. What a great idea. And we also get this other boss, the Triad boss. He's really fat, out of shape, old, and there's a scene where he faces off against the Cyclone, and you're thinking, the fuck is this old guy going to do? No, this guy knows some fucking kung fu, and even though he looks like a heart attack sandwich in motion, nah, he's gonna know karate, or well, not karate, kung fu. He's gonna know some martial arts as well, because that's just it's fucking cool that everyone knows some badass fighting, no matter how they look in this movie. And there's another old guy that's one of the bosses shows up, and he knows some fucking kung fu as well, despite being a geriatric or geriaction. There's nothing to call it that. Yeah, we know it's ridiculous that old people are fighting. Nah, we're just gonna give you that. We're gonna say nothing. We're just gonna get the good stuff. And this movie gave me a lot of that. And the director of the movie is the guy who done the Monkey King series. Don't know much about those, never really seen them, but I think the director in this does a nice balance between a family of misfits, straight up action movie, and not making it go into action comedy territory where it loses some of the trash and thrill. And that is an achievement in itself. So I think this movie sits very well in that territory. It just feels like one of those good action movies with a sprinkle of comedy thrown in as well. Like we get this scene where this prostitute is brutally murdered, and it's a bit of a traumatic scene for her kid. She sees the body and she's staring at it, and she's saying, I gotta go back to work. She's only about 5 or 6. A pretty heartbreaking scene. And then the gang of misfits decide to get these ridiculous masks from the shop and beat up this guy, the rapist, and it's played for laughs, but it's done so well that it doesn't make you think, here now, this is ridiculous. It's just such a pleasure of a movie to watch. Now, it's not groundbreaking, it's not amazing, but I do have so much respect for the essence of this movie. A hell of a lot of respect. And then later on in the movie, we get this other great fight sequence. And this movie's filled with little mini great fight sequences. Obviously not at the level of The Raid, but a few things are. But just very enjoyable choreography. And later in the movie, the main henchman of the Triads, who's got this really annoying video game type laugh, when he's like keeps doing that. Reminds me of the game Yakuza, actually. It's characters like that have these weird sounds. But in the movie, he's involved in a fight, and then one of the characters goes to stab him in the back, and then all of a sudden he utters the line, "Spirit defense." And it kind of threw me off guard. And I will say, for a minute, I'm thinking, and I was watching this with my partner, she also commented, wait, when did this movie get supernatural? And it's the type of thing you either go with it or you don't. But I already went with heart attacks on legs, doing roundhouse kicks and drop kicks and running faster than Usain Bolt. So hey, for me it was cool. So then you find out that this henchman knows spirit defense, so he's basically indestructible. So the final third of the movie is this battle with no explanation, no backstory, just is that this guy basically can't be harmed. And now we have to see this story of this main misfit who's a refugee and his friends, these various anime-esque characters. Now they have to fight this guy and figure out how to beat him like he's this big supernatural evil. And I went with it. I'm thinking, why not? This is cool. Again, that was my number one feeling. I didn't just think, oh, they jumped the shark with this. I thought, oh, what a great thing to throw in randomly. They're not embarrassed by it. They're not drawing attention to it. They're just probably sitting there thinking, you know, it'd be cool if the main guy can't be defeated like everyone else. Wouldn't that really be fucking amazing? And then it just adds to it. None of this stuff takes away from it. All adds to the vibe, like a concert where everyone's playing together. And then the backstory, as it turns out, the famous guy who used to keep the Walled City in line turned out to be the father of the Raymond Lamb character, or Ray Lamb, I can't remember which his name is. I'm here for that. I'm here for all that peripheral stuff to complicate things and just give us more scenarios based on this plot. I like when plot gives scenarios, when they're not just trying to be plot heavy to think they're writing The Godfather. So very fun movie. I think that's the overall case. And we often have these conversations where we're thinking, what should I put on tonight? Don't know what to watch. Hope it could be entertaining. Hopefully I can sit in my seat on a Friday night and this movie be worthy of my popcorn. Well, this is. Oh yeah, one other thing about this movie, as I go on my walk a day later, again, trying to keep it up, there is one part of this movie where, for no reason, this acoustic guitar melody starts playing over the Walled City. And I don't think there's anything particularly action oriented going on at the time. In fact, it's, from memory, a little bit more slumber like. And there was this riff that was playing on the guitar, and it went something like da 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 da. I'm thinking, I know that riff. What's that from? What is that melody from? I just can't remember. Is it Christmassy? What is it exactly? And then it hit me. It's from the song, that snowman cartoon animation around Christmas. That's like, we're walking in the air today, walking in the air. You know that one, that great Christmas short film. And then I think, wow, did that melody come from China? Is that a melody from there that they co-opted for that song, We're Walking in the Air with the Snowman? And then I look it up, and no, they just decided to play this melody that's synonymous with a Christmas song to accompany this place in China, in Hong Kong, in the Walled City, and it gives it a kind of mystical feeling, and it's just so relaxing, and it casts this lavender spell over this movie and that scene. And it's just the decision for the movie to throw in little things like that as well. It's just effortlessly charming as the days go by. I've seen it on Sunday evening. It's now Tuesday evening, and it's just growing a little bit more in my head. And I found myself humming that tune to my cat today and just smiling when I thought, oh yeah, that was from the film I saw Sunday, not the Snowman Christmas short.
Hey Matt, it's Monday evening now, I'm the last man up in the house. Just finished watching Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, which is a bit of a ridiculous title for a movie, but I guess it does accurately describe the film. As you mentioned in your voice note, I think both of us have had some interest in watching this film for a while now. We've both had it probably recommended to us in glowing terms, but still every time I've heard of it, I've completely forgotten the name of it because it's such a generic, well, it's not that it's generic, it's just a bit of a word salad. That title doesn't really stick in your head properly. Even now, having finished it, I'm still kind of like, what's it called again exactly? What's the exact wording of it? So just to provide some context, because you've sent those voice notes to me almost 2 months ago now, and the reason it's taken me so long to get to them is, as you know, every October I watch a horror film every day. So I think you sent them that voice note in quite late September, and I can't remember what I was up to at the time, but for one reason or another, I didn't manage to get to the film. And then, well, didn't get to it immediately. And then we go into October and I'm kind of watching a horror film every day, so I don't really have time to do anything else. And then we get to the end of October and I'm kind of all movied out by watching a film every day. And so now it's mid to late November and I'm finally getting to this movie. And so I don't know how good your memory is going to be in it. I finished watching it minutes ago. You finished watching it 2 months ago. So this might be an interesting conversation. But on top of that, in the interim, you've sent me through voice notes and a couple of other films. So when I have a sort of moment to catch my breath and get back into watching movies again, I have a little bit of a backlog from you. And since you sent that voice note about Twilight of the Warriors, you also sent a voice note about another film called The Night Comes For Us, which is another martial arts movie, Indonesian, quite different to this film, but, another martial arts movie. So I ended up watching that one first, and we've had a lengthy conversation about that a few days ago. And we both liked it. You liked it a lot more than me. And I think to whatever extent I disliked that movie, it came down to sort of two major complaints. Well, a minor and a major, I would say. The minor was, and that kind of dominated our conversation about the film, was that I felt The Night Comes For Us had a bit of an imbalance in terms of how realistic it was. I say imbalance because I felt like the film was close to being a more serious, grounded, realistic crime drama, and then had a few high camp elements that muddied the water a bit and made it a little tonally incoherent for me. But much more so, my complaint and the real thing that held me back from loving that film, and I love many action films, as you know, as do you, but all of the action films I love, I think, have strong character and plot work that makes me invested in the story and the people within the story. And I'm very clear in my identifying what people want, why they're doing what they're doing, the stakes, the situation, who I like, who I don't like, what's going on. It's just very clean and clear, and you get that from a lot of great action movies. And I felt that The Night Comes For Us was a bit all over the place narratively, and I found the protagonist and the whole story just a bit too slippery and a bit too poorly thought out, I suppose. So as much as I had some really cool fight choreography, and I, again, did like it as a movie, I had some major complaints which you didn't have. So that's what we've just sort of been talking about over the past few days. Now, I've now watched this film, so that just wanted to kind of give some lip service to the months of a sort of external to this movie experience that's brought us to this point now. I'll be giving you my thoughts and my response to your thoughts on Twilight of the Warriors, but whatever response you have now is going to be, reaching back into your memory from 2 months ago, and perhaps also colored by the lengthy conversations we've had about another martial arts movie over the last couple of days. Anyway, this film, I had it recommended to me friend of mine went to see it in the cinema with his friend who's from Hong Kong, and I think that was like probably like a really special way of seeing it. I wish I'd seen this film in the cinema. It feels like one of the ultimate cinema movies in many ways. But anyway, as I said, I completely forgot about the movie, certainly the title of it. In fact, I think I'd even forgotten that it was set in Kowloon, because I adore anything to do with Kowloon. As soon as this movie gets to that point where he runs off into Kowloon City, and I'm like, oh, okay, that this whole movie's going to be set here. This is amazing. Then I'm well, I was already sold prior to that. The film, I'm not going to bother stretching out the tension anymore. I fucking adore this movie. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Now, I think it's cheesy as all hell, but like, I feel like the way you're describing it and the way I'm thinking about it, we're going to be on exactly the same page on so many of these. Any complaints that people could have about this film, I think, I could instantly bat them away. Really, it's just, well, there might be one or two tiny quibbles, but for the most part, the film just does everything to my satisfaction. But I think what I'll do is I'll start just working through some of the points that you raised, because I've taken notes on your voice note, and Ben maybe just kind of speak a bit more broadly about the film. So that aesthetic that it has, that's kind of like, as you said, very CGI, very like all of the backdrops, it's almost like digital matte paintings, compositing, that shiny fake look mixed with the foreground, which is like incredible, like real actual sets and like so much detailed set design. Obviously, if you're taking on a project like Kowloon, that's like the ultimate test of an art director or a set designer. So there's a great mixture between, as you said, that kind of anime, like animated kind of visual component, and then lots of more tactile, real, actual stuff that comes from the film having, I would assume, quite a big budget, and they can actually do a lot of stuff for real. You mentioned that your girlfriend had the bathhouse in Spirited Away evoked when watching it. I think that's a perfect reference point. Like the Kowloon in reality, I doubt was a particularly cozy place. I don't think I've never seen it described in those terms. I've never really looked at photos of Kowloon and been like, oh, that was such a lovely, cozy place. This film almost makes it seem like Montmartre in Amélie or something. Like it's so soaked in golden sunlight and low lighting, and everyone's so nice and in their little cubby holes, and it's like The Borrowers, or just one of these kind of like children's books. There's another one that I'm trying to recall the name of, these kids books I used to have when I was a kid, of like little mice and little woodland creatures living in trees and stuff. But it has that kind of cozy vibe to it, and as you said, it has so much sincere emotional sentiment throughout the film that they managed to give you all of the gritty shanty town energy of Kowloon in an action sense, much like you'd get in something like District 9. But they also give you this really beautiful, lovely, cozy, familial story as well. Reminded me a little bit of RRR, which is one of my favorite films of the 2020s. I'm assuming you've seen RRR. If you haven't, then immediately watch it. But they're both action films that are absolutely loaded up with really sincere love and fraternal love and familial love and sincerity, as you said. I actually didn't quite think about that when I was watching it until your voice note crystallized such a big part of why this film works for me. As you said, we've had at least a decade, if not decades at this point, of this smug, tongue-in-cheek, jokey, not like sort of looking down on action movies, looking down on genre cinema as like, look, I know this is ridiculous. Like, a superhero jumps off a building and does some like cool drop or something, but they have to like make a joke out of it and make it. It's like they do like the Naked Gun version of those, because it's like they're afraid if they do the real thing, you'll reject it and you'll say it's cheesy. It's, you know, we've matured past that point. And I started having a drink and voice is getting into that winter stage now of waking up every morning with a sore throat. But I have seen films like maybe the first Guardians of the Galaxy where I like that sort of sarcastic, making a joke out of it thing to an extent. But when that's all you get for decades, you really, at least in my case, you don't quite know, you don't quite realize how much you're missing sincere action movies. And I could say the same thing about horror as well. Like, horror is a much worse place to get polluted by that kind of jokey energy, because it completely undercuts the fear factor and the scares. And so thankfully it's done less in horror, but it is done somewhat in horror. You definitely see some of these Blumhouse movies where you're supposed to find it funny as much as it is scary, and it just doesn't work as well. Anyway, putting horror aside, a whole different kettle of fish. In action, looking at some of these other countries like India and China, or Hong Kong, that are maybe still making their action films more sincerely, it's just such a breath of fresh air. And this film, the whole way through, as you said, it has a lot of like very heightened, crazy things going on, but it's going, no, this is really, we really think this is cool. We think this is brilliant. If you don't think it's brilliant, fine, you know, don't watch the movie or hate the movie or whatever, but we're not going to apologize for thinking that this stuff is super fucking cool and taking it super fucking seriously. And the film absolutely does that. So I think you're bang on the money in identifying that as a major strength of the film. It's incredibly fun, and it's like, it is what it is, like it or hate it. It's not for everyone, but I think we both love it. You mentioned that the fat boss, Mr. Big, he's called, that's actually Sammo Hung, who's like one of the most legendary martial arts actors in Chinese history. So right from the second I saw him at the beginning, I was like, we're going to see him fighting. He's old now, like Jackie Chan. In fact, he was like very associated with Jackie Chan. So you know that these people they're not going to be doing the same level of stunt work and stuff as they did when they were younger, but you still know they're not getting Sammo in a movie and not having him fight. So that one I was anticipating. Now the spirit powers thing, in the English subtitles it's translated as spirit powers. I'm sure in the original language it's a more specific terminology that we're not familiar with. That's an interesting one. You mentioned that being like a thing where like you went with it, you either go with it or you don't, but it was surprising. I guess I wasn't expecting that to happen, but I've seen that in so many martial arts movies where they have, you know, the pressure point stuff and they have to like do this and think this and act this, and then suddenly you can, you know, you can transcend the normal limitations of human physicality. But now when I see that in an action movie, especially a martial arts movie, it's kind of like that, like being able to run on the trees in Crouching Tiger, or just general, like when people are able to do, or they're almost able to fly in the way that they kind of glide around and stuff. It's like they in the Far East have different rules, I suppose. I obviously, there's a billion people. I don't want to like just say what they all think and what they all believe, like when I've never even been to China. But from watching movies, it seems to be the case that martial arts techniques And when I say martial arts, I'm not just talking about like combat. I'm talking about the meditation, the spiritual side of being part of that practice. It seems to me that they put a lot of stock in the spiritual and religious side of that practice, and that they, at least in movies, seem to either believe or just accept in film, at least, that you can do things as one of those fighters or one of the practitioners or whatever that are what we would term supernatural. So in the case of this guy in this movie, he is able to kind of do certain moves that are almost like what's the word? What's that martial arts where you're like moving energy around and you're forget it. But the moves he does are less like specifically aggressive, like punching, kicking. It's more like solo on his own, putting his fingers together and moving them in a certain pattern and stuff. And that then makes him, as you said, indestructible. You can smash a concrete block over his head. You can plunge a knife into his chest. It will just break. He's sort of fortified his body to that extent. And when I see that in a movie now, I'm no longer like, there was a time where I was like, come on, this is ridiculous. I thought this was real here. I thought everything else in the movie was real. What's up this? But now I'm like, yeah, that's just how they roll. And I think you, from the sounds of it, were able to just get on board with it instantly. I might not have been able to do that, but because I've seen it so many times now, I'm like, yeah, this is part of the furniture of these films. So I had no issue with it, and then obviously it's used to great effect because he becomes the most formidable foe. They've established the heroes as being pretty badass and pretty competent, so it's going to take something pretty special for them to go up against for the kind of third act of the movie. Another thing you mentioned was that scene of the prostitute dead and the little girl, her daughter, kind of looking up to her and finding her. That is so harrowing, and that is such a fucking heavy scene. It is really, really sad, and just, yeah, made me feel really bad. As you mentioned, it does a hard tonal shift immediately after that into like the most comedic, and really the only comedic fight scene. That's the revenge kind of thing. But that scene with the girl, that is like the peak of, and maybe it goes a little too far there if you want it to be like super nitpicky, but it is the peak of the darker side of this movie. Now, it is about an environment that I've only ever seen described in very dark terms, and it's like one of the most iconic manifestations of the poverty created by urbanization and capitalism and stuff like that. So you kind of can't set a movie in an environment like that without it having some darkness. But I think the poverty stuff, it's kind of like the film Titanic in a way. Like Titanic, to a large extent, is about poverty. Like that's a lot of what that film captures. But it's not a Ken Loach movie. It's a fun, escapist kind of film where we're going to make you think about poverty. We're going to repeatedly, time and time again in the movie, confront you with the implications of poverty, but we are giving you a fun, shiny, big blockbuster popcorn experience. So it may be in that scene with the dead prostitute, it goes like too far into the sort of how heavy and dark this film can become. But I also really like that the film has so much grit and grime, not just on it's not like a poverty tourism type of movie or something. It's more like, it's nice to see a film set in an environment that isn't just the richest, most glamorous people in the world, because pretty much all action movies are just like the uber rich, untouchable, whether they're secret agents or they're, whatever it might be. Like it's super high tech Lamborghinis, hologram displays, stuff like that. It's rare to see an action film that's like, this is the people that we're sort of hero worshipping in this film have it really hard, and they've come from the gutter, and they're trying to better themselves and their community. And I think that's just something that this film has that's really refreshing to see. And you also mentioned the walking in the air thing. Yeah, I had the exact same thing of like, what is this song? And then this is walking in the air. And I like that. I mean, of course, I would imagine it's not a famous song in China, so it's not like some weird subversion of like, let's take this iconic song and flip it. It's just them finding that song, making a cover version of it. It works perfectly. It perfectly matches the tone of the movie. And as an outsider to China, but as someone kind of local to that song, I mean, I adored that movie growing up. I remember like playing out in the garden. One of my earliest memories, playing in the garden with my aunt, with that song blaring, doing the snowman. My 3-year-old daughter recently saw that movie or that short or whatever for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Instantly loved it. Like, it's an evergreen classic. So for me, having a lot of context on that song and then imagining the filmmakers just out there scouring, looking at this, looking at that. We could put this in, we could put that in, we could put the spirit powers in, we could put this mob boss in, we could put a 1940s or 1950s, whenever it is, backstory in, put this track, put that. Like, it really feels like they've just like crammed this movie full of goodness, and it just feels so well curated. It's got so much going on in it, but it for the most part, doesn't feel too busy. Now, as you mentioned, the lore side of things is probably where, and by lore I mean that kind of historical backstory, and you referenced Star Wars there. It's like the generational thing. I'll tell you, on that subject, I'm like 80% in favor of it, because to 80% it's giving me like positives on the movie, and then I'm 20% like, did we get a bit too off track and a bit too muddled here? So on the 80%, I love the theme of this film, one of the themes of this film, which is that the generational handover from the old guard, like not the old guard, but the old power holders and sort of totems and icons of the environment, to the young generation. That's something I usually don't like, because it's usually like the older people are like interesting and cool, and then the younger ones are like the cool kid version, and they are thinner and more shallow. It's often the case that it's like a franchise that's been going for ages and we're trying to hand it over to younger actors or something. This is not the case here, but in this case, I really liked the old people. I really liked the young people. I was really invested in that handover of power, handover of life force. The older ones are dying, being replaced by good and bad younger characters. I think they establish all the characters in this film incredibly well, whether it's someone that you get loads of information on, or whether it's someone that's more of a kind of a more minor character that you don't really know much about, but they're still just well defined as they need to be for that role, for their role within the film. So in terms of the historical, generational, this father, this person's nemesis, blah, 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 a lot of it works. The stuff that doesn't work for me is the plot is a bit too complicated on that front. Now, it's not complicated to the point of not being able to understand it, but I'll give you an example. We have Cyclone versus Killer Jim back in the day. who's going to manage to kill who. Turns out they actually quite like each other and they don't really want to kill each other. But eventually Cyclone kills Killer Jim, except we don't see him kill Killer Jim. And we only see him come repeatedly. We see this thing of like not showing him being killed, just coming out of that room holding up the coat. So I don't know about you, but I assumed the whole way through the movie that he didn't really kill Killer Jim. And now I get to the end of the movie and I'm like, well, they didn't bring Killer Jim back. So is that because they're bringing Killer Jim back in the sequel to this movie? Or is it because it was just some weird editing choice? Then the reason why the old boss, the landlord guy, wants to kill our hero is because he's Killer Jim's son, and Killer Jim apparently killed his wife and kid. But we don't see Killer Jim kill the wife and kid. And we're kind of led to believe that Killer Jim's actually a decent guy, maybe. So did he not kill the wife and kid? And did they get kind of, sort of taken away and sort of hidden away somewhere else? And it just feels like there's potentially stuff missing, like more information there could be there. And maybe just a few too many characters, like the tiger boss, for example. He doesn't really have that much to do with the film. Killer Jim takes his eye out. His young guy who works for him ends up being part of the crew. It feels like he's just like one cog too many in this machine, or maybe one of 3 cogs too many. So I adore the film. I'm not here saying, here's why this film doesn't work. It does work for me. But I think any complaints I have about this film are just, it maybe is a bit too cluttered when it comes to that plot, that kind of generational nemesis plot kind of thing. But another thing it gives us, that plot, is that thing of like, you get to see these badass martial artists when they're old and when they're young, and they still got it when they're old, but it means something different because now they've got maybe a new generation below them, but can they, is there still life in the old dog? It reminded me a lot of Tekken, actually. At Tekken, you get to see characters like Hitachi at different ages. You get to see him old man badass and young badass, and then taking on the young person, and who's got more the experience and wisdom or the young vitality of youth and all that kind of stuff. So there's loads of cool thematic stuff you get out of that, but it is the bit of the film that's a bit more muddled. But yeah, right from the get-go, like, film opens with, I think it's in like a fight club type thing where like betting on fighting. Main dude gets screwed over, grabs what he thinks is a bag of money, and then runs off. As you said, we get that double-decker fight scene reminiscent of Police Story, but I think that's more just they're both set in Hong Kong during the British occupation, so they're going to have double-decker. But it feels like it's almost like you make a movie in Paris and there's an action scene at the Eiffel Tower or something. It's like, we're going to show some of the iconic ingredients of the day, and then he runs off into the walled city, and there's this parkour chase sequence which is fantastic, so good. The action scenes in this movie are absolutely electric. They are so well shot. They utilize the abilities of these actors as well as you can, I think. I also like that he constantly gets bested. He's being chased by this character that will sort of become one of his best friends. That guy bests him. Then he gets put into the room with Cyclone, old geezer. Cyclone bests him. Then later on, he has a fight with the main baddie. Main baddie bests him. I think Samo bests him. I think the old boss who wants him dead bests him. That people can get, like, there isn't just this straight hierarchy of like, this guy's the best, and it feels like you don't quite know who's going to win in a given fight. And when it finally emerges who is the like actual big bad of the movie, which takes a long time, they've then built him up with his spirit power thing to being like, okay, now he's the one where like we're really gonna have to work hard. And I don't know if you had this experience, but I had that moment watching this where I'm like, how the fuck are they gonna take this guy down? Which is a really cool thing to feel in an action movie. Like normally when you're watching an action movie, you're like, well, they're gonna take him down because he's the baddie, and I'm watching James Bond here, so he'll just take him down because he always wins. In this one, I'm like, no, I don't actually see a way where one of these guys can just like outfight this dude. So the movie's either going to cheap, like just mess up that and kind of give you a unsatisfying ending, or it's going to have to figure something else out. And what they figure out is that if they all work together, and they work together really strategically, tying his hands so that he can't do his body shapes to like get him in line, and then they kind of get lucky with just forcing that blade down his throat, and then that's stabbing him in ways that sort of breaking his spirit posturing or whatever, then they can take him down. It feels really well earned, and it feels like it makes a kind of sense. And he's such a bastard as well. Like he's such a horrible guy. I normally find that character, the kind of like constantly laughing character, a bit more annoying, but I think it works well here. So anyway, what more can I say? I mean, I wish I could see a movie like this more often. I definitely am curious to see more films by this director, but I feel like there's a bit of a perfect alchemy to this film, especially with the Kowloon and I'm not familiar with most of these actors here, but it feels like they assembled a really good crew, like not just on a fight choreography level, but on an acting level. Like Cyclone on an acting level absolutely smashes it. All of the old guard bosses deliver brilliant performances. In fact, the young guys do too. It's just like everyone in this film really is delivering on the two fronts needed, acting and fighting, in a really great way. And with the emotional sentiment of the film, some of my favorite things about this film are just like almost B-roll type shots of life in Kowloon. Just as you said, people going about their day, making their food. When he arrives as like this refugee, completely lost. Like from the beginning of the movie, we're so on board with him. He's like, seems to be this guy who's just like come off a boat, doesn't have an identification, doesn't have anything in this world. He's completely penniless. He's dressed almost in rags. He washes up on the shores of the Kowloon City, almost in metaphorical sense. And they go, look, you can make a go of it here. If you're willing to work, you can get by. This here's a place for you. It's almost like you're a lost child of the world. We learned that, I mean, before we know his actual real heritage, we learned that he's an orphan and he's no family. He's alone in the world. And the actor does such a good job of making him seem scared and alone and hurt and just a deer in the headlights. And he slowly but surely carves out a little life for himself in this place that gives him a second chance. The city gives him a second chance. The people in it give him a second chance. It's one of the best depictions of community. I was thinking about like China as a communist country, or so-called communist country, and thinking about how this is one of the ultimate examples of a film that's like the power of the people and the kind of like praising the common man and community and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that that's like an intention behind the film, but something that crossed my mind because it almost has like a Cinema Paradiso type feel of like, look at this lovely town, which is definitely not something I ever thought I'd say about a Kowloon Bates movie, but I want to go back and just like hang out with him as he's chipping away, and then everyone's gathering in the barber shop to watch the sitcom and joking together, and they get themselves a karaoke machine. It's a hangout movie. Whatever it's doing in any scene, it could be doing a hangout movie. They could be shooting the shit, playing mahjong. They could be doing some like big action thing, flying a kite. Like I just love the vibes of this environment so much, and it definitely gets to the point where, like, when someone that you love is taken down, whether they're killed or they're hurt, they're jeopardized, you're like invested, you care. And then all that, well, I knew at least that Kowloon was destroyed and no longer exists. And so that's why it's set in the 80s. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, it's called Twilight of the Warriors. It starts in like the 40s or 50s, wherever, and it's like, this is a tradition. The movie you're about to see is about the end of a tradition. And then you know that it's set in a very specific and particular environment that's ending. And it's so romanticized. And I like, some people might watch this and go, it's not really what it was like. You shouldn't be romanticizing it. It was horrible. It was hell. It was vicious. People were dying all the time of sickness and malnutrition and being robbed and raped and murdered and blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. This movie isn't a documentary. This is a highly romanticized, like Titanic, highly romanticized version. It's like when they go down to the bottom of the boat to steerage in Titanic, Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio dancing around, everything like that. It's like the gutter still has like good stuff about it that you can also make a movie about, and you can show both sides of it, but yeah, I think this movie strikes a really nice tone. I think it's very clear in what it's doing, and it's just so well put together that I would struggle to imagine that the director has more films to this quality in his catalog. But I will have a little bit of a browse, see what's out there. So yeah, glad to finally caught up with it. I'm not sure how much context you still have in your head. You do have a much better memory than me, but I'll really be pushing the limits of that now, 2 months into when you've watched it. Anyway, Tuesday morning now. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I've already been up for hours. Daughter woke me up super early, so I made a loaf of bread. I've got her watching the Moomins, having my morning cup of tea now, just starting to piece myself together. Just want to drop in another voice note with a few more little tidbits that came to mind. So one, I was looking on Wikipedia about this movie, and it turns out that the film has been in production, or some sort of development rather, for decades, since the early 2000s, I think. So there's a version in the 2000s that was greenlit, would have starred Johnny To, Chow Yun-fat, Andy Lau, Tony Leung, Anthony Wong, and I don't know where these parts would have come from, but would have also featured Nicolas Cage and James McAvoy, and would have been directed by John Woo. That was so much a done deal that they actually started the early stages of marketing it. I think there's like early sort of pre-production posters with the cast listed and everything. So that would have been interesting. That's, again, hard to think of a better rendition of this story than the one we got, even in the hands of John Woo. But yeah, interesting that there was a incredibly star-studded version of this film that almost got made years ago, and there's been a few other failed projects since then. I also, after I sent you my voice notes there last night, I went on YouTube and I watched the trailer for a film by this director called Limbo, which seems to be a kind of serial killer movie. It actually reminded me of the Fritz Lang film M, weirdly, even though it's like 100 years apart. But that could be one worth watching. Looks pretty cool. Looks actually much more serious and dark than Twilight of the Warriors. Another thing that I remembered that I didn't mention in my voice note, but there's a scene in this movie where your man, our main character, Egghead or Loke, is he kind of comes back after being broken. It's almost like a Dark Knight Rises bit he has in this movie where he gets completely destroyed and then he has to rebuild. And he comes back, he's now healthy. He's been in some sort of deportation center or something, and then he kind of proves his nationality and he's able to kind of head back to Kowloon. And he learns that his 3 brothers in arms have been just so eviscerated by this like bad guy that they've ended up living in squalor in some sort of shanty town down by the docks. And he shows up with his like little bag on his back or whatever and kind of looks across the water and he sees them all hobbling around and they're just real, broken characters. And it just feels like such an epic moment. So it's so iconic, so much storytelling. And it's an example of many moments in this film where we get everything summed up in a really powerful image, like a cyclone flying the kite earlier and in this kind of town square type thing. And it just evokes such a feeling of like, he's managed to get this community and this society to such a stable and positive state where this is the type of activities that they can turn their eyes to. And as I was watching these moments, like that moment where he goes down to the shanty town, I'm thinking, we've been through so much and we know we're going to go through much more, because this film is not going to end with them just playing mahjong down at the docks. Like we're watching character arcs and journeys. And what it reminded me of, for one reason or another, was Game of Thrones. Now, obviously, Game of Thrones is a TV show, and I think 5 seasons TV show, but Game of Thrones, like many other shows, but for one reason or another, Game of Thrones came into my head, maybe because it's kind of like mythological and it's got all the special effects and everything. But you could say this about Oz, for example, that thing of like, where is this character now? And now they're in this new situation. Now they're going to have to figure this out, and they're going to have to rebuild, or they're going to be taken down, and power changes and everything like that. And it made me think about the fact that when I watch TV shows, by and large, I feel that could have been shorter. It was a 13 episode miniseries. It could have been 6 episodes. It was a 6-season drama. Could have been 3 seasons. It was a 45-minute episode. Could have been a 25-minute episode. That kind of thing of padding it out with filler. And many TV shows, they kind of have to be TV shows. They can't be movies, because it would just be a complete such a different format that it's pointless to even consider making it a TV show, or making it a movie rather. But this movie, watching it, it really struck me in that moment how this could have been a TV show. It almost more logically would have been a TV show. You would, if looking at the material and looking at everything it accomplishes and what it sort of sets out to do, you would think that on a business level, any sort of studio executive would probably go, that's a TV show, make that as a TV show. And I'm so glad it's not a TV show. I think, and it's a long movie, it's over 2 hours. It does a lot. As I said, it's a little bit too cluttered with characters at times, but it really gives me everything I want. That I'm full and satisfied, and I feel like I've had a really great experience and story and adventure watching this film. And by the end of it, when they're sitting up on them rooftops looking out over the Hong Kong skyline, it does feel like a season finale or series finale moment. But I'm not watching this going, oh man, I wish I had like 60 more hours of this. It's like, no, this is perfect. And if they had made this with a TV show, even with the same actors and the same production design and kind of, the DNA of this film, I probably wouldn't have liked that TV show, because there's many a great movie that that I don't want to watch for 100 hours. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was interesting. But that struck me. And yeah, now it's been, I guess, about 12 hours since I watched it. I'm just, well, less, I suppose. It's real early in the morning here. I'm just really enjoying reliving those moments. Shin coming in the motorbike in the final fight, just like leaping through the air and bam, taking down a couple of guys with his front wheel. And all the lighthearted stuff and all of the more intense stuff. And yeah, very, very satisfying experience.
Hey man, I love the way you signed off the voice note there where it gives you everything you want. So I'm very glad you've now found the movie that gives you everything that you want after the movie we talked about last week. So yeah, I'm really not going to be able to give you much in this conversation now. It's been a long time, and as far as my memory extends, I don't remember much about the details of this movie at all. Just so much the feeling of the movie. And it's also just as well that we pretty much agree wholeheartedly on this movie, because if I had to defend or quibble on a point about anything that you brought up that I would disagree with, I would probably struggle to defend my point or get it completely wrong. So it is very good that we agree on this movie, and I'm glad you had a good time. And I wish I saw this in the cinema as well. What actually happened with the recommendation of this movie was that it came up randomly on my feed, and I asked you, have you heard about this movie? Is it any good? And then you said your friend recommended it to you. So I took it on that strength as well. So it's a nice roundabout way that we all end up watching this movie. Yeah, do you know what it is listening to your voice note about this movie as well, and just hearing you talk about the things that I said and the things you've experienced, and just it's interesting when you don't have the play-by-play of a movie anymore, but all you're left with is the feeling. And what I'm left with this movie is a really great popcorn experience, a really nice, warm, fuzzy family feeling, which is strange. And do you know what? It also reminds me of, and I know you're a big fan of these movies as well, you know, these kind of movies where communities get together and solve issues and solve the problems, like October Sky or It's a Wonderful Life, or movies like those. This movie is almost the martial arts version of that. It's this band of misfits finding commonality and friendship and just the community, I guess, would be the closest way of describing it. So yeah, that's what I'm left with this movie, thinking about it now. So what I'll also say is, you mentioned a few interesting things there as well regarding the structure of the movie and these moments in relation to both the lore and in relation to certain things that happened. You mentioned the scene with the kite, and you mentioned the scene, I think, where you said they're down by the dock when they have to reunite again after they've been disbanded and they've got their asses absolutely kicked. And you mentioned it in relation to a TV show and the structure. Well, funnily enough, this movie is actually going to be made into a trilogy. And what I really enjoyed about this, and I did know it was going to be a trilogy going into it, nowadays when we get trilogies that are planned, there's almost a lot left on the table and a lot undercut almost, because, well, we need to save this for the next movie and we need to build this for that. So movies like Dune was the most famous example, and that wasn't even a trilogy. That was, oh, let's give us maybe 20 pages of a book. Like you often say, it's the beginning of a Disney movie when Simba gets killed. Let's make that into a 2 hours, 40 minutes, drawn out, high production, really serious beast of a movie. And I like Dune 2 a lot more than you, but certainly Dune 1 is guilty of that. And Star Wars and things like that. And we talked about John Wick the other day. Pretty sure John Wick was never planned to be a trilogy or a quadrilogy, if that's the word. So the first John Wick has a very strong story, at least at its core. And then when it comes to things like the lore and the boss and the hotel, all those things are almost nice little cherries on top, rather than, well, wait till we expand this in the second movie, wait till we see, well, you got a little glimpse of this character, we'll wait until the third movie when his story really comes into it. And I don't enjoy movies being made that way, and I don't enjoy movies being watched that way. Maybe the biggest argument for that is when the whole trilogy is out, then I can watch them and I can binge them. Maybe I'll get a little bit more out of it that way. But in terms of a singular experience and a cinematic experience, I really don't like them. So I was very pleased with this as well, that they are just making a movie here. And maybe we're going to get things going forward where the lore is extended upon. And you mentioned that, oh, well, you thought because you didn't see that guy getting killed. Well, we're going to get that in the second one. And maybe because you didn't have a sequel in your head, that you didn't think that. But I also think that's a credit to the film, because sometimes now you can tell when a film is being set up to be part of a universe just in how it's constructed. Famously, the Tom Cruise The Mummy sequels or reboot or whatever, Russell Crowe turns up in that as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then you start getting the impression, oh, all right, they're really going to turn this into something else now. Thankfully, they didn't, because the movie stunk out the building. But with this movie, yes, there's lore there if you want to expand on it. Yes, there's things that maybe haven't been fully answered, but you feel like you get your tickets worth of entertainment, the tickets worth of story, and tickets worth of character, that if you never got another glimpse of this movie again, you wouldn't be thinking of, oh, I wonder what happens next. So that's a really good plus of the movie as well. That's already really good. I wasn't as familiar with that area of Hong Kong as you were in terms of that building and the lore of it. I might have heard it in passing, maybe seen movies when I was younger set there that I wasn't aware of. But so for me, it was great to explore a location like this. And there's actually a movie that came out not so long ago called Concrete Utopia, where it's set in one massive building and location, and, well, I'm not sure if it's the building, but like a block of flats in a kind of area after this massive earthquake takes out the world. And just seeing the community and inner workings of that type of environment, I was already primed to when I saw this movie. And like you said, the argument could be made that, oh, well, they're really Disney-fying this, or whatever you want to go with it, that they're making this into a a really appealing kind of community. Well, like you said, doesn't really matter. I'm not there for a documentary. I'm there for this movie. And the movie does lend itself to a type of movie magic when it comes to a community, when it comes to bigger than life characters like this. And like we keep saying, the Spirited Away Bad House, it's got that feeling to it, doesn't it? And with regards to the spirit defense or whatever the fuck it was called, so I have never seen something like that in a movie, being pulled into the ranks in very late into the movie. Obviously, I've seen stuff like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where I've seen it pretty much from the beginning or very early on, if I'm not mistaken. And I've seen movies where it's an element from at least the first act, whereas in this, it's almost like a twist. And it's not a twist in the sense that, oh my God, like this exists in this universe. It's more of a twist of, oh God, no, I've heard of this type of spirit defense. You get the impression that they've probably heard of this before and they're well aware of this type of thing that exists, but they're shocked that they actually have to fight a guy with the spirit defense. So I really like that. And as ridiculous as the spirit defense is, and again, I loved it in the context of the movie, I, like you, really thought, well, how the hell are they going to do this? Do you know what it seems like? And I play a lot of video games and you play a lot of video games. It's like when you playing like a Dark Souls game or this game I played recently called Remnant 2 and just after finishing Dragon Veilgear. And there's bosses in these games where the first time you come across them, they just have all these move patterns, all these defenses. They seem indestructible. And all you can do is roll and shimmy and do the most basic things. And you're thinking, I am never going to beat this guy. How can I beat this guy? And I feel like he's presented in this in a similar way, where you're just watching it as a viewer. You're not playing the game, but you're watching it unfold, where you're thinking, well, how are they going to do this? And then they get their ass kicked for quite a long time, again and again, in that sequence. And then obviously they're working together, which is great because it ties in so well with one of the core themes of the movie. And it's just a joy to watch. And how often do we get that when we watch movies like Marvel movies or End of the World movies where these bad guys show up and you don't really give a damn how they're going to beat them. You don't feel the threat. And this is a silly movie that takes itself seriously. But you do get that feeling of that unstoppable evil or unstoppable force, but in such a fun way where you're left to think, well, this is impossible. And like you, I was thinking, we're going to get a kind of, I don't know, a MacGuffin type thing that will get rid of this here, or they'll defeat him stupidly. Maybe he'll have like water weakness or something. And how they do it is really satisfying. It's a great satisfying conclusion to a boss battle. So yeah, glad you enjoyed it. It's a shame I can't really go into much more of the specifics because I really do forget a lot about it. But I feel like because we agree so much on these elements that even if we had watched it a week or two apart or much closer than that, probably have covered it pretty well anyway in terms of our love for this movie.
Hey man, just walking home from the office now. Absolutely pitch black. Might as well be midnight. Feels like winter really hit today. On the way in and at the train station, suddenly I say heavy, but you know, a fair bit of snowfall just broke out. and kind of persisted throughout the day. Hasn't settled much, but yeah, it's been nice to see the first snow of the year. It's freezing though. And yeah, I'm exhausted. Been up since 4:30. Feels like 6 weeks ago since I sent my last voice note into this chat, but actually thinking back, it was this morning after being woken up. So now, much further into the day now, but mercifully nearing its end. Yeah, it's my bad for dragging my heels on this one. It would have been nice to talk about it when it was a bit more fresh in both of our heads, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one that we both hit again at some point in the future. I'm not a big film rewatcher, but there's something about the cozy vibes of this movie that make it quite appealing to revisit. And now you tell me that it's part of a trilogy, an upcoming trilogy. Could be reason to revisit it. Maybe skip the next movie, and then when the third one's coming out, watch the 2 first ones again or something. Now, just on that subject, you mentioned that it's to this film's credit that the bigger picture franchisation of the story doesn't encumber this film at all. I do disagree with that. I think now that you've told me that there's a sequel, I then go back and I think about the 2 major plot points that really didn't work for me, which is the fact that you never see Jim being killed and therefore constantly waiting for the twist that he's alive, and just having that, well, at least for me, having that just as an ongoing expectation and tension that's never resolved throughout the film. And then the same thing with the landlord guy's wife and children, not seeing them being killed and waiting to see them show up again. It's a quibble because we're talking about a film that I really, really love, but it's definitely not something that wasn't present in the film. So now hearing that, oh, that's because that's actually set up for stuff that's not in this film, or more than likely anyway, that does make me look a little bit unfavorably at that, constant obsession with constructing franchises and expanded universes and whatnot. Now, I will be watching the other ones. It's hard. It's kind of, you said this film kind of like it completely gives you your money's worth, and it sort of fully satisfies you as a single entity. Completely agree with that. Like, I felt like I had watched a movie. I didn't feel like I'd watched chapter 1 of a story. I felt like I got a resolution and all that. But the kind of flip side of that is now I'm less interested, I suppose, in the sequels in a way, because I'm like, well, does this really need a sequel? I know that Kowloon is destroyed, maybe 5 years after this film is set or whatever it is. So is it just going to be some other adventures in Kowloon, or are they going to go somewhere else, or what's it going to be? But anyway, I guess we'll see where that goes. You mentioned at the beginning of your voice note there that you have seen the film so long ago that you've forgotten the specifics, the moment-to-moment plot points, but you're left with just that feeling from the film, and that it's a warm, fuzzy, cozy feeling. I like that. I think this is what makes this film so great, and it's what makes a lot of genre films great, is when they have something deeper that resonates and sticks with you as the film's identity, and they're not just a bunch of cool fight choreography. Like, this film has an emotional identity. It has a philosophical identity. It's a film that, even as you watch it, you're being entertained as much by the themes and the world and the characters and the feelings and the relationships and all that as you are by the action. And so when you forget the action, or you forget like every single, backflip, you're left with something really special in the rearview mirror. And yeah, I think that's why the film works for me so well. I just keep thinking about like how well drawn those characters are and the hero, you know, it's simple stuff. I think this would be a good film to show someone if you're trying to explain that kind of super iconic, archetypical action hero and baddie and all that kind of drama. It's almost like ancient theater, like Greek theater or something like that. It's simple but incredibly potent, and you can't fuck it up. But you can't make someone do or say or act in a way that contradicts their identity, or the whole thing kind of crumbles. So people will go, oh, well, it's easy. Just make the goody good, make him noble, make the baddie like sinister and sadistic. It's like, yeah, kind of, but considering how few action films actually manage to pull off this clarity of character and story and somehow just mess it up along the way, I think you have to commend films like this. Like thinking about something like the Expendables movies, which are literally just like, wouldn't it be cool if this guy had a massive big, he had some huge massive rail gun that he's shooting everyone. He's got big muscles with tattoos on, and then baddies start snowboarding down the mountain, and they're just thinking of the type of stuff that you think of when you're a kid playing with Action Man figures or something. And they're right. All of that would be cool and is cool. But if it's shallow and if it's not done with a consideration of like, why are we here? What do people want? Does it make sense what they want? Does it make sense that they're behaving this way if they want that? And if it doesn't have all of that integrity, it just crumbles. The other thing interesting is right now, as I'm recording this, it is late November. Christmas is coming up. We're Christmasifying the house this week. Put up a tree and have my first mince pie of the season today. It's all happening. It's all happening. This film features the song "Walking in the Air." It's not an intentional Christmas reference, but the tone of that song works perfectly for Christmas and works perfectly for this movie. And the reason for that is because both what this movie is about and what Christmas is about is, harsh darkness, bleakness, sadness, being kind of split apart and parsed through by the human spirit and community and love and celebration and all that. And there's just, I know that I'm, going a little overboard in how much I'm kind of reading into it, but it works at least for people who associate that song with Christmas. They can go, yeah, all of the feelings that I've always had attached to this song, they marry up with this movie. And like one of the movies you referenced when you were talking about what this film reminds you of and that sense of community and stuff was It's a Wonderful Life, which also very connected with Christmas and happens to be my favorite film of all time. But anyway, we've talked a lot, me and you, over the last few weeks about films that are not overtly Christmas movies. So they're not Elf. They're not The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. They're not really anything to do with Christmas on a kind of surface level, but they work as Christmas movies. In other words, they work as this movie would be on TV over the Christmas holidays, and it would be on like an afternoon. Everyone's full of food, collapsed on the couch, and just watching like something that's got like a lot of good humanity in it, a lot of entertainment value. It's not too challenging, but it's also got enough to chew over that it's actually like a good movie. The Great Escape is one that we've talked about a little bit. I think you could say Indiana Jones movies, just like adventure movies. You could certainly say family movies like Jumanji. And it's kind of hard to exactly pin down like what the criteria is for that thing that I'm referring to. But as hard as it is to sort of
neatly articulate the criteria, it's actually fairly easy to pluck examples out. You might not be able to argue their case. It's a sort of smell test type thing. But this film absolutely goes into that pantheon. And I think a big part of that is, like what you said, it's a film about community, people working together to triumph over adversity. It's an adventure, popcorn, fun, good feelings movie. It's sort of a something for everyone type movie in the way that Titanic is, you know. I mean, actually, this film doesn't have romance, weirdly, but it has a hell of a lot of bromance, which kind of fills that part of the equation. So, yeah, it's kind of giving you a lot of what the movies give you. You know, if you think about the movies as just a really vague concept, why are they captivating to us on a sort of societal level? Why have they become such a big part of how we kind of organize our life? Me and you were like massive film buffs, but I think for everyone, almost everyone in the world, they to some extent kind of orientate their life around movies. Maybe it's going to see the new Captain America movie that's coming out in the summer, or maybe it's like on a Friday night just like throwing on Netflix and seeing what's there. People come back to this medium time and time again for obviously a multitude of reasons, but I think films like this are a big part of the appeal and the excitement and the kind of vital characteristic of the art form of like, yes, here I can go and I can really feel everything in a really extreme way that feels nice and leaves me in a good state. So there is my point that I'm trying to land on here is that it is a Christmas movie in this Christmas adjacent category, if you want to put a category. And just another thing that I like about it, maybe I'm thinking about it now because it is coming up on Christmas. And yeah, the last thing that you mentioned there that I want to touch on is you said that you've never seen this spirit powers thing introduced so late into the movie. You've seen it in movies like in Crouching Tiger, where it's kind of introduced early, so you're familiar with it as a concept, but you're not. It was more shocking because it's introduced late. Agreed. I don't know that I've seen it introduced quite this late. I may have done, but I have certainly seen a fair few movies where it starts off without any spirituality or superpowers or anything, and then the hero goes and trains with some like amazing master or whatever, and that guy teaches him, oh, you're going to learn water power, where you make your body like water, and then like something where I'm like, oh, everything he's been doing so far, yes, there's been wire work, yes, it's been physically impossible, but it feels like it's just a heightened version of actual jumping, actual kicking and whatnot. And now you're introducing something that's like, well, that's spiritual, that's different. I don't think I've had it as late into the movie as it happens in Twilight of the Warriors. So I agree on that front. But because I've had that sort of rug pulled out from under my feet a few times, and actually have found it, haven't liked it usually. I've been resistant to it, times I've seen in the past. I've now been sort of like beaten into submission. I'm like, okay, this is just something we're getting with martial arts movies. We're getting films that are 90% real world, and then someone's developed their martial arts to a level that goes beyond what I believe is possible, kind of thing. But I do think a lot of people believe that, and that think that is a plausible skill level to arrive upon. So anyway, could be wrong with that, I don't know. But that's why when it came up, I was like, oh, this thing, yeah, they do that, and of course, it's just done really well. It's very entertaining. It's very like everything in this movie is very appealing. So yeah, great flick, big fan. I think we're on the same page. I don't think we've much else left to say about it. But let me know if you hit up any more movies by this director.
because, yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what else is out there.
Do you know what? In my voice note, I was about to say, the Twilight of the Warrior Walled In, it's one of those Christmas adjacent movies, isn't it? But it was so long since I seen it, I wasn't sure if it was just because it was the festive season that I said it. So I'm very glad that you got it in there. For anyone looking for a Christmas adjacent movie from an unlikely source.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.